Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. A quick apology before we begin, as the audio quality wasn't as good as we would usually like it to be, but hopefully you'll still enjoy the conversation and we'll hopefully make sure it doesn't happen again. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Ben and Dougie to talk about going barefoot. Ben's the founder of the Barefoot Crew 5K, a barefoot marathon runner, and he's best known as a barefoot daddy. Dougie is the head of pastoral at our outdoor school and a barefoot and ice bath enthusiast. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
So over the last few years, there's been quite a big rise in the popularity of going barefoot, particularly for kids and for runners. I don't know about other people listening, but my Instagram ads are always going crazy for Vivo Barefoot for kids. Where do you guys think that popularity's come from, and what are the kind of the origins of the barefoot movement?
Oh, age before beauty.
Thanks. For me, I think COVID actually helped. In lockdown, people were starting to look at alternative ways to stay healthy. Gyms were closed. More time to exercise and think about and research alternatives to what they've maybe been used to. I certainly read lots of books and podcasts, and when it comes to barefooting, I think those are on the rise as well. Having listened to Rich Roll podcast and Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's Live More, Be Happy, I think it's called. They talk about, and I've been talking about barefooting, and I've been sponsored by Vivo Barefoot as well, which helps to raise awareness of it. When it comes to books, Born to Run by Chris McDougall, and the sequel out, Born to Run 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see it on my feed because I am a barefoot runner, much like Doug is, and so I see a lot more. I don't know whether those are just the algorithms thrusting that sort of content at me, and I'm inclined to think that that's probably what is getting thrown to me. So my perspective is it's more prevalent and more popular because that's what my feed has sent to me.
Yeah.
I'm a commercial property agent by trade, and so I get the opportunity to travel around, predominantly London, and I walk around London, and I've seen, for the most part, some Vivo Barefoots or others in various parts of London, but they are far from prevalent, would be my view.
Yeah.
There's more people with bigger bubbles than I know what to do with on the sole of their shoe. That you're sort of like, oh, well, you're just sort of bouncing around and all, which goes completely contrary to what has become my perspective on it.
Yeah.
I think that parents such as myself and Doug and others within the sort of community are encouraging their children to wear barefoot shoes and expose their feet to more sensations and textures and all that sort of stuff. But if you're getting a lot of that feed as well, I think
I do run barefoot as well, so that is probably what I'm getting at, because I've bought from them before.
Yeah.
But I think it is the niche, but I do think I'm seeing more people down our neck of the woods wearing those kind of shoes than I used to.
It might be the Totnes effect. For those of you who know Devon.
Through Marlborough in the Waitrose in Marlborough, although that probably is probably the most elitist statement that I could have made, really. But I have seen other patrons walking around, and I've noted their Vivo barefoot trainers. I haven't necessarily noted other brands.
To bring it to more mainstream people you're observing doing it as well, Joe Wicks, again very popular during COVID lockdowns and still now. He wears Vivo Barefoot when he's doing his training sessions online. And there's a guy called Ross Edgley. He's a athlete and author, and he's on Instagram quite a lot and written some pretty good books about physical training. He swam around the UK a while back, and he's carried a 100-kilogram log up a mountain, done some crazy stuff like that. He's a sort of a super endurance athlete. He again wears barefoot shoes and is quite sort of open and proactive about that when he's talking about it on his feed. So you're getting that popularity coming out in some quite well-known figures as well in the media.
Yeah, that's true. Where do you guys think? Where did it all start? Do you guys know? Like, how long has this kind of been going on that people have been wearing these kind of shoes? I mean, obviously you could go right back to where we're barefoot, but in the kind of modern history.
Well, do you know about?
Sorry, I was having
headphone issues, Ben.
Yeah, about 14 years ago, I think it was. I saw a friend of mine wearing Vibram Five Fingers, which Ben's a big fan of, and I thought, oh, all right, I like the look of these. I'm quite into that. I'll buy a pair. So I bought a pair, went out for a 5 mile run, trashed my calves because you have to learn to run again, different way, and then was in a lot of pain afterwards, thinking, right, this isn't for me. But I do know that at that point you could quite comfortably get Vibram Five Fingers, but there wasn't much more out there to my knowledge. The book Born to Run came out 2009, if I'm not mistaken. But prior to that, I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Canada for 12 years and was running and doing bits over there periodically. And my first pair of shoes was, I want to say, around 2009, and it was a New Balance pair of Nimbus something or other. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I've written about it once or twice, but so I got exposed to them because they looked pretty. Tried them out in the shop and quite enjoyed the sensation of not having a cushion in the shoe, and decided to buy them. And I think from there, social media, I don't think was quite what it is today. And that I think that was sort of when I started seeing or noticing Vibram Five Fingers, but it wasn't like, I mean, again, sort of fast forward, 15, 16 years now, and Vibram are quite popular, but again, a lot of that exposure is the feed, so they're quite, so like all of these barefoot things, and coming back to what Doug was saying, I think a lot of it sort of is attributed to lockdowns and focusing on stuff if work wasn't going, and how do you entertain yourself?
Yeah. Well, that segues. Oh, sorry, Ben.
No, all I was going to say, I was going to sort of add on that sort of barefoot running has always been without shoes alone, and presumably we'll get into it. There's a guy called Barefoot Ken Bob Saxton who wrote a book a long time ago. It's not the easiest of reads if you ask me, but he wrote a lot of like a technical piece on how to run without your shoes, and that was quite a while back. I'll try and find out sort of I'll try and look in here for the details as to when it was first published, but it sort of builds into how you should go running barefoot and all that sort of stuff. But even prior to Born to Run, which seemed to be the real sort of eye opener. So.
Yeah, I do remember a track athlete years ago, Zola Budd from South Africa. She ran barefoot. I was a small child at the time looking at her going, wow, she's got no shoes on.
No shoes
she's
on,
in the 10,000 meters and things like that. It was pretty cool, but there seems to be a bit of a gap between noticing things like that and then, Born to Run coming out in 2009.
Yeah. Well, I guess that segues quite nicely to the kind of the most obvious question, which is why do people choose to go barefoot? Like for you guys and for other people that you've spoken to and you guys know, like why are people choosing to do this?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to kick this one off, Ben. For me, it's dead easy. It's a connection. It's a connection with nature and with the ground. It feels right. It feels normal. It feels quite natural. There's a lot more information coming out about what we're meant to be doing naturally as humans, and it's not sitting in offices, sitting on chairs under artificial lights, wearing shoes wrapped up with so much cushion that we can't actually use the 20,000 nerve endings in the soles of our feet to feel what we're standing on. I mean, the foot's full of muscles and bones and tendons, all designed for a very specific purpose, yet we don't give them the chance to do their job. When I take my shoes off, I just feel really grounded and connected, whether that's just walking around my garden, around the house, or actually out for a run. That's for me.
Yeah. I mean, so repeat the question again for the just.
It was mostly why do people choose to go barefoot?
So there's not really much I can sort of echo with. Well, it seems to be people of a certain age, and I hate to, but so I am 46. My brother-in-law, who is maybe sort of 6-9 months older than I am, currently still serving army officer, loves going barefoot running. He's obviously not on any sort of community or anything like that. He's a private man, but he and I have sort of talked about them when I did the world record last March. He ran the leg with me completely barefoot and all that sort of stuff. It tends to be, and they're just two examples, but the community, if you look at the average community member, I would say that are we baby boomers born in the 70s? I think we are. Is that right? Or is that Generation X?
We're Generation X.
Generation X. I just think
the best generation.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's that wanting to explore a little bit more. I mean, the generation before us was kind of hippie-ish, so it was periphery, but actually there's some benefit to grounding. There was a great film called, and it's going to elude me now, but it talks all about grounding and how the neurons and electrons from the planet can help inflammation and all this sort of stuff. And it might be sort of hocus pocus. There's plenty of people where you can buy a grounding sheet, which is a cord that runs into your soil that then feeds a connection to under your desk, where you can glean the benefits of being sort of grounded despite sitting at a desk. It's kind of American. The film itself, I think it's called the Earthing movie.
Okay.
You can find it on YouTube for free. It's about an hour and a half. And one of the things through that I think made me quite aware was the fact that if you ignore the fact that at the end of it, because it's a very American kind of documentary thing, it gets a bit commercialized talking about these grounding sheets.
Yeah.
If there is so much benefit to standing barefoot on the ground, then why wouldn't you try and do it?
Yeah.
But for me, it was, I kept on getting, much like we talked about earlier, a feed of people as a minimalist runner, and I think there's a definition of two. So minimalist is in a Vibram or a Vivo Barefoot or a Seguro or what have you else. But I think the definition should be the minimalist and barefoot runner. If you're barefoot, you're barefoot. There is also the sandal runners. And I just kept getting these feeds of people running in sandals and all that stuff, with occasional people walking or running in barefooted. So I was like, well, I can't quite fathom the sandal piece, because your foot's not protected. If I'm not going to protect my foot when I'm out there, why wouldn't I just take everything off and go barefoot?
Why bother having a bottom bit?
Yeah. So either I'm going to wear a shoe or not. And I think that it is quite eye-opening, really. I think you realise how resilient your feet are, and as Doug was touching on earlier, there's a couple of podiatrists out there that are very pro barefoot, and they bang on about constantly the concept of 25% of your muscle and bone are in your feet.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an absolutely astonishing amount of muscle, ligaments, and bone that are in your feet. They're designed to move and undulate, not being. I was watching a silly YouTube video with my son the other day, and there was a lady walking on in her heels and stuff. And as she started walking down, she was wobbling on the heels because they were clearly too thin. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be a little bit more sure-footed than not? It's the same for guys and all that sort of stuff. So I've ad-libbed a little bit, but I'm sort of half getting on the soapbox.
No.
It's easy to do.
Because I was thinking about, I switched over to the 5 fingers because I'd read loads of stuff about it improving your running style and your posture, and I'd always struggled with posture. So I just kind of focused on the physical benefits, thinking, well, if it makes me run better, then that's why I'll switch over. And I hadn't really thought so much about like the spiritual kind of kind of psychological kind of mental benefits as well that you guys are chatting about. So that's really interesting, because obviously everyone comes to it for a different reason.
Yeah,
Like
what
when
Ben was saying.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
So Ben was saying about the grounding part. I use Earth Runner sandals, but I did my park run in them, Ben, just so you know, last week, last couple of weeks. The reason being it's just a little bit too stony for proper barefoot. But I went minimalist and put my Earth Runner sandals on. I got a few comments like, "You're running in flip flops." No, I'm not. However, they have a little copper button on the bottom that's fixed to one of the straps, which helps with the absorption of negative ions from the ground. Which is exactly what you're saying. It helps reduce the inflammation and everything else. So it's fascinating once you get into the science of barefoot and grounding as well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'd heard people talk about how beneficial it is just to stand on the soil barefoot, but I don't know why I hadn't made the transition to thinking about doing it all the time. But yeah, so obviously some kind of spiritual and kind of psychological benefits for you guys as well as the practicalities.
I mean, I'm remiss to use the term spirit. I'm not.
Maybe not spiritual.
I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but I just there seems to be some logic in that position. You wouldn't necessarily do it on a man-made substance such as concrete or tarmac. You're not going to glean the same benefits. But if you're able to sort of expose yourself to, I keep on talking to my mother about it every so often when she whinges about sort of a needle in her back, and she thinks I'm insane, I'm sure. But like for what could fundamentally be 15 minutes, why wouldn't you try it? Oh well, my feet might get cold. Well, that doesn't really matter. Why wouldn't you try something that might actually improve the and if it doesn't, then don't do it again. But why would you not? Why would you not try it?
You're right, and let's not overlook the resilience factor as well of doing it. Pushing yourself outside what would be your normal comfort zone. Wearing a big padded trainer and a nice warm shoe. It's kind of better really to be a little bit more exposed to discomfort in your life, because if you can do a little bit of discomfort and start with the soles of your feet, then the big things don't seem so big when you can conquer the little things.
Yeah, that's a really really nice approach as well to take, isn't it?
It's very eloquent, Doug. Well done, sir.
I am trying.
Who's the teacher?
I'd love to hear about your guys' own experience. I mean, you just mentioned your world record attempt, Ben. I'd love to hear a bit about what that was and how it went.
Sure. So, as sort of was alluded to earlier, I started the Barefoot crew. I'm labelled as having started the Barefoot crew. I just did a thing on Instagram that said I'm going to try and go barefoot at this time. On this date, if anyone wants to virtually join me. It was in the midst of lockdown, and I was slightly overwhelmed by how many people sort of daisy-chained. I think I probably had 50 people following my little sort of running diary and all that stuff, and it sort of ballooned from there really, to the point of it. I started engaging with 2 or 3 others in the feed. So there's a guy called Case Lewis who did he did the what is the third 3 mountain? Doug, you might know this.
3 Peaks.
He did the 3 Peaks challenge barefoot. So he did it the traditional way, which was driving between each peak and then barefooted up the mountains. Anyhow, he seemed a natural point to come in and sort of engage with me to want to be a part of it. There's another guy called Damien Kennedy, all of whom are still sort of floating around in the surface, but we're out of lockdown and everyone's got jobs. So it's sort of the administration's changed hands a little bit.
Yeah.
A guy called Damien Kennedy, who was also very much into that same sort of process and sort of exploring one of the younger crowd. So he's sort of early 30s. And then you've got an ultra runner called Vicky Owens. So she then came, and we formed this bond. We ran we did a marathon that October of setting it up barefoot around Dorney Lake. And then after this, there's a point to my story. After this, Vic turns around and goes, you said after the run that you would be fascinated on doing some other sort of challenge and all that sort of stuff. How do you feel about doing this? I'll take on the female version where there wasn't a record. How do you fancy taking on the male version? And I sat and thought about it for about 5 minutes and was like, sure, why not? And so the current world record at the time was 20 consecutive barefoot half marathons.
Okay.
And Vic's proposal, ultimately, she was the driver behind a lot of this stuff. I was like, well, sure, we can do 25, we'll be fine. She was like, no, we're going to do this. We've got to go for 31 days. And so we did, on the 1st of March, we started, her up in Denbigh in Wales, myself down here in Wiltshire, start our own little journey, running half marathons every day, completely barefoot, and all that sort of stuff.
And you did a month of it?
Yes, yeah. The beauty of being self-employed is that I was able to sort of manage my schedule. So I have a partner in crime through sort of collaboratively working together. But I've mentioned that I was planning on doing this, and actually it's become a bit of a calling card in the nature of what I do for a living, because I've worked with a lot of gyms and find them space that actually coming to the table with a barefoot world record under my belt.
Yeah.
It sort of makes them feel that that's where. Anyhow, I'm not marketing that. So the experience was odd. The first one was fine. It was the ebbing into the days, and we were fortunate enough last March that the weather was pretty decent in the first couple of weeks, if you recall. It fluctuated a little bit, and there was a hell of a lot of rain. I spent some time looking for the right sort of course that was quite easy to get to.
Is it all off-road, your course?
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you're going to do a sustained thing like that, having varying terrains didn't seem to be logical to me. And so there's 100%. So there's this beautiful place, an area of natural beauty not far from where we are, called the North Wessex Downs.
Okay.
And so I ran around that. I sort of mapped out. Again, leading up to March, I went off and ran it a couple of times, trying to work out what the best course was, and I ended up doing 7.5 mile loops. Yeah. Or 6.5 mile loops, rather, to do the 13.1 miles. And it was, I mean, it was once you got into it, it was just fantastic. I mean, running for a living, like constantly in the middle of some beautiful part of the country, I can't see what's wrong with that. So yeah,
was there a point at which it got like? Was there like at some point during the month where you thought, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can keep going. This is like, exhausting," or whatever it was, or was it kind of?
Yeah, there was one day. It must have been. I remember it quite well because I decided to take. So that I've always run with my dog, and I decided that 13.1 miles every day for 31 probably wasn't good for him. And so I ultimately left him at home. But it was just one day where the motivation, it must have been midway through the situation, and I took him with me, and a half marathon took me 4 hours.
Okay.
I'm not particularly fast. My fastest was 2 hours 12 minutes, I think, at one point, which I was quite happy with as a distance.
Particularly because it's off road as well, and
but that was the worst day. But I remember having conversations with Vic, and we'd sort of swap voice notes constantly during the course of it, going, I'm not sure I've got. And she did what she does very well, which is motivate you. And why would you not think that you wouldn't be capable of doing this, and pushing it. And it got into the following day. It was I was slightly more enthused, picked up my time, and just sort of gripped my teeth and got on with it. It was quite nice to have. I think the army, and I can't talk for the army having never served, but I'm an army brat. You have walls that you have to go through, and I'm looking at Doug for this. That you have walls to go through, and sometimes they are mental as much as they are physical walls.
Yeah. And
that was mine. But once I was over it, I was like, it's not cocky to the point of, I've got this, we'll nail it. But it's like, I can do this now. That the system. You just needed a kick in the arse that gave me the extra point of resilience.
It was great to follow your journey on Instagram and your daily uploads. And your emotional roller coaster that you went through from real enthusiasm at the start to, pretty tough days, and then getting through the other side. It was really good to watch and be there for you.
Well, I mean, there's a whole narrative, even in like just a normal marathon, isn't there, that you're going to hit your wall at somewhere between 18 and 22 miles. So I guess if you're doing something over a month, then it would make sense that kind of wall translates to, within the month period as
Within
well.
the- yeah. I mean,
And
it was a profound experience. I'll be honest. I think I've got another silly little thing that I'm going to attempt in June this year, but it'll be very different.
can you tell us what it is or not yet?
Yeah. I'm going to attempt to run 140 miles in 24 hours barefoot.
Wow.
I
140.
104. I worked it out. I need to run 5.83 miles every hour,
Yeah.
which on the surface sounds all right. I can do 5.83 in an hour. That's fine, but I'm going to have to do it for 24 hours straight. I think that if I'm honest, I think that there's a lot stacked against me in being able to. It's going to have to be quick, and it will have to be consistent. And if I
maybe not so many hills.
Well, the course that I've sort of identified that I might do is about, I think it's about 1.5 miles.
Okay.
It does have a slight incline around it, but there's a nice part that you can come down and loop.
1.5 miles, so you'll do that like
87 times.
Do you think you'll get bored
87.3 times.
Do you think you'll get bored of the route? Because I've seen quite a few endurance races where it's like, here's a 4-mile loop, do it as many times as you like until like you've just had enough.
I mean, I think the simple answer is yes. I think there's a high possibility of that. I mean, if there's enough people that are streaming down and running with me, and there are invitations for people to do that, we would need witnesses for Guinness anyway. If I was to actually pull it off, so that you'd sign witness cards and so on, as well as the various bits of video footage. But I think having people running with you will sort of alleviate that boredom, especially one of the things. So Vic did the female version last June. So there's a lot of she and I have sort of collaborated on these sort of little barefoot missions, it seems. And the hardest point for her was the night time. The area where it is horse gallops, and you can see for miles at various different points that it almost looks like something on the out in sort of Oklahoma, I was going to say Oklahoma, Montana. If you see the buffalo coming over the hills in old sort of like Dances for Wolves, for example, it's got that flavour to it. It's the English version. So it's probably deer coming over the top of the hill. But I find that to be quite an inspiring space.
Yeah.
But I think that, as I said, I think the challenge will be pretty. I'm not sure I'm quick enough or will have the ability to do it, but I'm going to have a go. And I think that's kind of
there is the community around you. I mean, the barefoot community, it really is very strong, even though we don't meet up that often. In reality, I mean, Ben and I have met once, but geographically disparate. But there is a real strong sense of community amongst barefooters, like we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And actually, I think you're right. I think that having that community support and the company is one of the things that will change the whole perspective, won't it? Because it's just totally different if you do a long race on your own, if you do the long race with someone that you're going to chat to. Like, it just changes your whole outlook.
And you got to zone 2 training is typically you should be running where you're able to have a conversation with someone and all that sort of thing. So that's sort of kind of what I'm aspiring to. But it's I've got what 5 months. So I've been training since it feels like the last 12 months, constantly strength training and running and all that. So I might not be doing a lot of distance, but I feel that the endurance piece is sort of in play. And the technicalities of what should I be eating, I'm less inclined towards doing gels and try more sort of natural foods. And then what's the thing that then triggers your body to eat its own body fat to fuel yourself for a 24-hour period? I mean, it's sort of drowned in how should I be breathing and all this sort of stuff. But there's this like
there's rabbit holes to go down.
Oh my god! And this is the thing from barefooting. I mean, the conversation starts with that. And sorry for dominating the chat at the moment, but the amount of rabbit holes that I sort of fall down. So Patrick McKeown, and he does the Oxygen Advantage, which is a book about nasal breathing all the time. He's got a new one called the Breathing. I'm reading at the moment, the breathing something or other. But then there's a whole bunch of other people that then get into, keto and all. It's how do you improve? But I don't know. I don't know whether there's a threshold where there's too much information.
You need to take a step back. I was going to say, it's interesting what you say about the nutrition, because I spoke to a trainer who's trained Olympic cyclists all his career, and I did a 50-mile run in my Vibrams last year, and I was chatting to him in advance, and was saying about. I said, I don't like gels and stuff. I'd much rather have real food. And he was saying, he said with all my Olympic cyclists, he was like, unless like they really can't stomach any more real food, he was like, I always stick away from gels. And I thought, well, I'm going to take his advice, because if he's training guys that are, winning medals, then he obviously knows what he's talking about. And
There's a good book called Eat and Run.
Eat and Run.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to say Scott Jurek. I'm pretty sure it is. He's an ultra distance runner. He's talking about nutrition on the go, and very much, making his own burritos and mixes and things like that to take out rather than gels. Yeah, but like Ben said, I'll echo that about the rabbit holes, 100%. James Nestor's book Breath is terrific. To get into that, I tried nasal breathing. I am continuing to try nasal breathing. I've managed 5k, and I'm working on improving the distance, and it's not as
Have you taped your mouth?
No, I just tend to keep it. I need to get it open now and again, but it's good. But that rabbit hole, that sort of biohacking rabbit hole, once you've started down the route of what else is good for your body that we're not doing. I mean, that's how I got into cold exposure and wild swimming, which is like what we were talking about earlier, Hannah, about.
I was just about to say, it's a nice segue to your ice baths, because I do think they kind of go hand in hand in a way.
Oh, you can't beat it. I've got a whiskey barrel in the garden full of cold water. It's just the best feeling. That's what you need, Ben, for your.
I'm building. I've been I keep on looking at the Lumi tanks that are quite prevalent on the market. I mean, that are marketed by them like every 5 minutes, it seems like. Especially since having looked at their site, that they've got a tank that was like 95 quid, which I was quite tempted to get. I just haven't made the commitment yet, and I kept on having these lofty ideas of building my own, or getting a barrel. A barrel would be a great idea, but I haven't. Just again,
you won't regret it. Well, I started off cold showers, and then I went to a wheelie bin, and now I'm on a whiskey barrel. So it's
once you've started, I was talking to someone about how you've moved from a bin to a barrel, and how I said to you, do you think there's any kind of benefit beyond the aesthetic? And you said no. And the person I was talking to said, well, to be honest though, they're like, the aesthetic is still part of the psychological element. Like the idea of saying, I'm going to get in a bin, or I'm going to get in this beautiful barrel, probably puts you in a better state of mind for getting in as well.
Well, it looks nicer in the garden.
That is true. Dougie, I want to talk a bit about your kind of barefoot and minimalist running, but I just had one last question, Ben, which was, on your big challenge last year, did you and Vic run any of them together? Did she come down for the last one?
She did indeed. The last one, good. She surprised me on the day just before I was about to head off, and knocked on my front door saying, because she had said at one point that she wasn't going to be able to do it. And I had a touch of people that came through. I was okay with it, and then she showed up on the door with her and a chap called Graham McKenna, who's prone to doing quite a lot of long distance runs, and Ian came along and joined me on the last day.
So
we crossed the line at the end. So yeah, it was fantastic. I was just going to add as well that on the food piece, and then I'll sort of stand down a little bit, but around the time of doing it, I was reading Rich Roll's book. And he's obviously
Finding
well
Ultra.
Yes, he talked in there about a smoothie that he would eat just before he went off on a big jaunt. And so I kind of morphed that and had a smoothie each time I headed off my run, and then all I had beyond at my turnaround point was a half a banana, and I was off. So that experience has led me down the road of, I don't like the idea of the gels, the overly sugary gels, and it's either water and that sort of stuff, or nothing. And I think we could survive on doing nothing as well. But anyhow, by the way, I'll just
well, you know, I was like, there's a whole other conversation. I almost went down a rabbit hole of talking to you about food, but I was like, actually, maybe I should stick to the barefoot. So, Dougie, you said it was around lockdown that you kind of started thinking about it, and when you first went out and buggered your calves.
Oh no, God, did that? I buggered my calves up about 12 years ago. Okay. and then promptly sold my Vibrams after one run.
Oh, did
on
you?
eBay,
okay.
On eBay, and then parked that idea for a while. But so I'm. You both know I'm ex-military. I had 18 years of progressively worse knee pain, including 2 operations over the years. I've had countless orthotics prescribed to me by podiatrists. I've even had special fit boots made over the years. But actually nothing could help me. My knees were getting progressively worse, and I couldn't run for more than about 3 or 4 miles without some quite crippling stiff pain in my knees, which, as you get older, it is quite debilitating and really frustrating.
Yeah.
So for me, my natural curiosity with finding out about interesting new things, and my actual physical discomfort, which was just getting worse, it led me down to trying barefoot with a very much a view of, well, what could go wrong? How bad can it be? I'm
Might
already
as well
in
try
pain,
something at this point. Yeah.
might as well try it. Absolute game changer. It really was. I haven't had knee pain in ages. I've been barefoot now for 4 years. I've been completely free of normal shoes for over 2. When I wasn't wearing them towards the end anyway, at all. Still had them in the cupboard just gathering dust, but I don't anymore for over 2 years. But yeah, so going barefoot started off around the home, then around the office when I was at my desk. Then it was minimal shoes as a pair of Viva Barefoot out running, and it worked for me. It really worked. I found that actually I did the research this time, hence the problem with the Vibrams last time. But I did the research. I transitioned properly. I took my time. I did the correct training, which I think you probably want to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
And it worked for me. And then I found that my knee pain went away and hasn't come back. I now comfortably go out for many miles. Many miles more than I used to be able to. Certainly not to the length that Ben does. So kudos to you there, my friend. But no, I could easily go out for 5, 6, 7, 8 mile runs and not feel the pain that I used to, when I wouldn't even be able to reach that minimum sort of marker. So that's really for me. It changed the way I run, and it changed the way I feel about my body and about my fitness, and I couldn't possibly go back.
Yeah. And when did you adopt the kind of the ice bath and the cold water swimming? Was that similar kind of time?
Yeah, it was about the same time. Yeah,
Was it?
I do. I believe Wim Hof. I'm gonna have to name check Wim Hof in this.
No, go for it.
The legend that is Wim Hof. I read his book, thought this guy's a legend. I'm gonna give that a go. So it all started. He's very much a proponent of barefoot as well. All started around about the same time.
Is that a coincidence, or do you think that was something going on? Like, was it? I mean, was the knee part of the reason you decided to try the water as well, or was it just that you happened to read the book around the same time?
I'll be honest, I don't actually recall. It just all fitted together at the same time.
Fitted beautifully together.
My curiosity just led me straight down that sort of route.
Lovely. So yeah, you just talked about transitioning. So yeah, I'd love to talk just a little bit for people who have been thinking about starting to either wear minimalist shoes. And actually that distinction, Ben's really interesting, because I always talk about running barefoot, but I'm in Vibrams, so like 5 fingers, so they're not actually barefoot. But for the purposes of the conversation, let's just call maybe all of it people that are trying to remove their soles, basically their big chunky soles. What are your kind of thoughts for helping people with some tips on transitioning and getting into it?
I've been waved in to take this, but crawl before you walk, I think, is sort of the idea, and then walk before you can run. Get used to it. I mean, there's a lot of people who start sort of snooping around the idea. They impress upon when they ask questions, impress upon us that they're walking around the house without shoes and all that sort of stuff. That's fundamentally the place to start. Get comfortable without shoes on. Don't necessarily wear your slippers around the house and all that sort of thing. And as you're doing that, then sort of gently take yourself outside, go and walk on the grass, all that sort of stuff, and then move. You can get really inexpensive. I know it's not an uncommon line of questioning, but what sort of shoes would you recommend if you're getting into it? If some people are going to warm to it and really sort of take to it, some people are not. You can go a decent pair of Vibram 5 fingers, or Vivo Barefoot, or I don't know, Morel Vapor gloves are another one. I've got a couple of pairs of those which I've quite enjoyed over the years. They are circa between 60 and 120 quid a pair. It's quite a reasonably expensive undertaking for something that you might not last with. I've had a couple of pairs of Segurus, which are bottom line is I think they're manufactured over in China. I think it's owned by an Argentinian firm. I'm not sure whether whether a Chinese company is taking it over, but they're manufactured over in China. They're about between 20 and 40 quid either on their own website or Amazon, and it provides a nice little bit of cushioning, zero drop, and all that sort of stuff. And it's, for me, if you're not going to get on with it, then you don't feel quite so hard done by spending 20 to 40 quid versus you would do 120, which is quite a large sum. So that's the step, but it's not. I would run a jog a mile on, say, a tarmac or grass surface before you then sort of venture into, gravel and going for it. And there's the expression "know thyself," right? So you'll know what you're capable of dealing with, and if you will, it's inevitable. At some point, you will nail a rogue stone or pebble right on the ball of your foot or on the heel of your foot that absolutely kills, and you limp around. But because you're by that stage, you should have transitioned in a sort of a gentle approach. That your foot will respond accordingly, and you should be okay. But I think the key piece is slowly but surely. If you don't get on with it, that doesn't make you any. It doesn't make us any better or worse or whatsoever.
Yeah, the structure of your feet has to change, you see, over time. The more you expose it to a hard surface, the greater the fatty pad volume will be. It's not a matter of your feet becoming like tough old leathery hobbit feet, because that actually doesn't happen. The more you expose your feet to hard surfaces, the fatty pad under the ball of your feet strengthens up and actually becomes denser in volume and quite bigger, which allows you that cushion and that protection, and that's not going to happen overnight. So that's really key to take your time. But there's loads of advice, again, going back to what we're talking about, Instagram, the Barefoot Athlete, and then Andy Bryant, the podiatrist from Australia. There's some super advice out there for people about
Rena
transitioning.
Harris is quite good over here. Rena Harris is based in London. She's well. Her and Andy are part of a consortium of health practitioners called the Healthy Feet Alliance.
Okay.
So you can find them on Instagram and all that stuff. And there's also what's her name? Who's the woman who does a lot of the barefoot shoe reviews?
Anya,
that's it. So she's a part of the same group as well as the Foot Collective. And I mean, hopefully people will listen back to the podcast if they're intrigued enough. There are so many resources out there.
Yeah. I think you've mentioned so many, you guys. It's amazing.
The Foot Collective, I think they've got outposts they've got Spanish, they've got South America and Australia, and I think there's I think they've got people out there that are trying to. And the beautiful thing of this whole barefoot thing, it is fundamentally global. I mean, the Barefoot crew, it always staggers me where we have people sort of tagging on a Thursday where they're running. I mean, there's a lot of Europeans and Americans, but you've got people down in sort of Hong Kong and India, and Japan. There's a couple of people over in Japan that are also sort of. It literally stems the whole world, and so you should be able to find someone wherever you are. That will be able to give you some advice or guidance. So it's a niche, but it's a global niche. It makes it sound bigger.
on that first Thursday, we did that first Barefoot 5K. We were in double figures the amount of people that turned up for that, but we're in thousands now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So your Thursday one, is those when you were talking earlier about the distinction, are all those people with literally no shoes on, or are some of them in 5 fingers as well?
You do not get any sort of feature if you're wearing shoes.
Oh, I see.
So the whole point is that you're not, if you're a barefoot crew and you're in Vibrams, well, you're not actually barefooting. The whole point of it is just try it. I mean, you could go off and go for a walk. You could go off and go and stand in the garden for 15 minutes and get your sort of allocated grounding for the day. You could, and they're going to splash in a puddle or try and stand in the snow for 5 minutes, or, time yourself as to how long you can stand in the snow for. But it's that sort of thing, just to get that sort of sensory overload. Though most people are out there running, I'm glad to say, and some run in regular trainers, and for the last mile or 100 meters, take the shoes off and run on a nice flat bit. And there is no, there are no loves lost if you're doing it on grass. I'd much rather run barefoot on the grass than I would do on tarmac or concrete or anything of that nature.
There's no extra kudos for getting the texture in.
100%. It's just kick them off.
Just get out there and do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Before we kind of wrap up, and also thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you guys wanted to say about kind of barefoot running before we kind of get to the end bit, and that you thought, I really want to mention that we haven't covered?
After you, Mr.
I'd say try it. You've got nothing to lose. You might like it, you might not. It might be for you, you might not. But you won't know until you try. So get your shoes off, get your socks off, get yourself outside, go for a walk.
It's free too. It doesn't cost you anything.
Free.
Yeah. I mean, everyone has some greenery somewhere. I can't add anything more to that. It is free the feet, kick them off, stand in the garden, 5-10 minutes, whatever. Do it around the house. Take your feet off and walk around the house a little bit more than West End. My wife is. You would have thought that she would have sort of succumbed to it, but she walks everywhere in these lovely moccasin-like sort of slipper things that she wears. Just take the shoes off, man. It's not that bad. So yeah, that would be my advice. And yeah, if you don't try, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Give it a go. You only live once.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, guys. I'm just going to ask these last 3 questions, which I've been asking everyone, just because it's a nice way to kind of end. And the first one, and this might be quite obvious given what we've just talked about, but it's how do you relax?
Doug.
Well, I'd like to spend time with family. I read. I really enjoy painting, but it's just finding the time for that, landscape painting, and obviously going for a barefoot run and then getting in my whiskey barrel straight after.
Okay, whiskey barrel, love it. How about you, Ben?
Relaxing. Yeah, much to say. I have a son that we hang out with, but it is. I quite enjoy fart-assing around with woodwork from time to time. I think my safe space is doing some pottering in the garage where nothing is able to bug me, I suppose.
What are you making at the moment?
I literally put the first 2 shelves into my son's wardrobe, so he's turning 8 in a couple of short weeks, and we've decided that his baby wardrobe is no longer is surplus to requirements.
Yes.
So what are we going to do with it? And so yeah, I'm building a couple of shelves, so nothing too extraordinary, but it'll be useful to him.
Be useful, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we've already mentioned a little bit, but what are you either reading or listening to right now?
Well, I'll chime in here. So I've got 3 books on the go at the moment, and they're all kind of the same ilk, really. So I'm reading The Breathing Cure by Patrick McKeown, which was a follow-on to The Oxygen Advantage, which gives you exercises about breathing. It's quite good. It only came out to the back end of last year. Another one of the rabbit holes that I fell down was this guy called Dr. Phil Maffetone, and I'm reading his book, The Endurance Handbook. There is a key to these books, by the way. And then finally, there's a one called Boundless by a guy called Ben Greenfield. So they're, again, another sort of ultra athlete who has tips and tricks on what they do. It really is boring, but I find it quite fascinating. Well, let's send my son to sleep real quick when I'm doing story time.
How about you, Dougie?
A couple of books on the go. Reading one called The Lost Rainforests of Britain by Guy Shrubsole. It's about the temperate rainforests in Britain, a significant portion of which are here in Devon and Cornwall, which didn't know about. Didn't know we had rainforests in the UK. Who knew? It's a fascinating book. And another one I've got, which I got for Christmas, which I'm starting, is The Life of Brian, about Brian Johnson from AC/DC, big rock, dad rocker. So sadly, nothing to
not to do with Monty Python.
Nothing to do with this conversation, but very good book. Listening to Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO podcast. He's got a guy called Mo Goddard on. He was a former chief business officer at Google X. He's now an author talking about happiness, generosity, and empathy. Very good.
That sounds nice.
Diary of a CEO.
Yeah, someone recommended that to me the other day, actually, so maybe I should give it a listen.
Well, that's a sign.
It's a sign now, twice in a week, yeah. And finally, why is being outdoors important to you?
it just gives you peace, doesn't it? It's quite nice, cold or warm. Listening to the bird. I don't listen to music anymore running. There was a time where I listened to music running, and I find more joy being outside, listening to and being aware of what's going on and all my breathing. Or it was accidental. It wasn't overly thought out. But actually, I don't think on the 140 in June I'll probably wear headphones at certain junctures because I think I'll need it to zone out to. But I think on my just regular runs, and it's just it's just exposure. I feed the birds in the back garden. I find great joy in just seeing them coming down and the interactions with them and all that stuff. I think there's nothing better.
From my perspective, every single memory I've got of a happy place in my life has been a beach, a forest, or a mountain. So it's, there's never a memory for me that's indoors that has the same impact as being outdoors. I'm very lucky to work outdoors. Again, having spent a lot of time in my military career being outdoors, I get to do it again. It's just good for the soul.
Good for
That's
the
it.
soul. Absolutely.
Well,
thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And good luck on your challenge, Ben, in June. We'll be following it.
Oh, please do, yeah. And if anyone wants to come down to Wiltshire, get in touch with me, and I'll let you know where the venue is, and if you fancy running or whatever, then
Come and cheer you on. Yeah.
Quite cool. Yeah, very cool.
Thank you again to Ben and Dougie for joining us to talk about going barefoot and wearing minimalist shoes, and in fact wearing no shoes sometimes. Hope that you enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, we would love it if you would subscribe, if you would rate it, if you would share it with your friends, just so that more people can find us. And that was the last episode in the second series of the Outdoors Group podcast. We'll be back at the end of March, beginning of April for our third series. And I'm really excited to tell you that our first episode is a conversation that we had with the Eden Project about the education work they do. And it was really, really exciting and interesting conversation. So please do tune in for that one. And of course, for the rest of the series. That's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.